to the Challenge to Change podcast. My name is Hazel, and this podcast is all about the little changes we can all make that will have a positive effect upon planet Earth. If you're new here, welcome. If you've listened before, welcome back. The Challenge to Change podcast has been brought to you on behalf of ANSA Environmental Services. To find out more about ANSA, please visit ANSA, which is ansa.co.uk. Let's get into the podcast episode. So welcome to this episode of the Challenge to Change podcast. In this episode, we are going to look at 20 ways to help us adopt more of a zero waste lifestyle. So part of the reason for me recording this episode today is because we are currently in Zero Waste Week. So it seemed like the perfect time to share this episode with everybody listening. So let's get into the 20 different ways to help us adopt a zero waste lifestyle. And the first one is refuse the unnecessary. So consider refusing items that are overpackaged. Now, I know that is sometimes easier said than done, but many shops do sell loose fruit and vegetables. What I mean by that, of course, is fruit and vegetables without packaging. So bananas are a great example here. And of course, as we know, they already come with their own packaging, the skin. So they don't really need an additional layer. Plus, also, food waste is reduced by choosing fruit and vegetables without packaging. And you may be thinking, well, how does that reduce food waste? Well, basically, because it allows us to purchase the amount of fruit and vegetables that we actually want. It is also a great way of reducing waste overall because the items that you've purchased are packaging free. So it really is a win-win. Additionally, it may well be that you also save money by purchasing this in this way. So by purchasing 4 bananas, 3 bananas, or whatever it might be, it should in theory be cheaper than purchasing 6 and so on. So that's one example using bananas to indicate the point. We can also choose things with reduced packaging. So very often when you're looking around supermarkets and shops, you may see something that actually indicates on the item in question that the packaging has been reduced. And you may well know this on a personal level because you may remember what it looked like before. So a good example here is if you're thinking about a plastic bottle of, say, juice, for example, it may be that the lid has been made narrower than it was previously. And as I say, we'll very often say that on the bottle in question. Now, of course, we know that plastic is a bit of a difficult item. And of course, when we're thinking about zero waste, we are very often talking about reducing our plastic waste as well. But of course, we can't always do that. So there are things that come in a plastic container and there are things that we may choose or want to buy in this way. So it can be helpful if we opt for something that is clearly indicated that the packaging has been reduced. Another example here is a container of tea. Now, I don't usually purchase loose leaf tea, which is beneficial to the planet because, of course, if you buy loose leaf tea, then you are reducing waste by doing so. But I do buy tea that comes in a cardboard container. And as I've mentioned on the podcast before, this particular brand of tea has no inner packaging. However, I have found that it still stays fresh for a really lengthy amount of time. Although that being said, I am someone that drinks quite a lot of tea. So there's really no time in my household for it to become stale. Due to the fact that air or moisture has got into the container. However, if that's something that you're worried about and you've purchased tea that comes just in a cardboard box and has no inner packaging, and you're concerned about it staying fresh, then of course you could put it in a reusable container, maybe made out of metal or plastic. So that's another example there. Another thing that we can do when we're thinking about refusing the unnecessary, if we feel brave enough to try some very gentle activism, we can speak to our local shop or supermarket, or shops and supermarkets, and ask them if they're looking at reducing their packaging on products, or indeed selling things where possible with no packaging at all. So really, although I've described it as gentle activism, it is literally just a case of speaking to the store manager or a member of staff and asking that question, if we feel brave enough to do so. Because the more people that ask these questions, the more that we are letting suppliers know that that is what we want as consumers. So it is a great thing to do if that's an option for you. So let's move on to our second example. Reduce paper usage. So we can opt out of junk mail by signing up to the Mail Preference Service. So if you search online for Mail Preference Service, you'll find out more about how you can do that. We can switch to digital subscriptions. So if you subscribe to a magazine or a newspaper, we can opt for a digital version rather than the printed version. And we can try and reduce printing at home, and indeed even in the workplace where that is possible to do that. Though of course sometimes we do need paper, and we may even prefer to read a physical newspaper, magazine, or for that matter, a physical book rather than the digital version. So it's really just a case of doing what we can. It's not a case, of course, of completely removing preference out of the equation. Sticking with reducing paper usage, we can also support our local libraries. So we can get our physical book reading fix without spending any money or using too many trees. Moving on to our third example, we can bring our own bags. Now, of course, this is something that's been talked about many times before, not only on this podcast, but just sort of generally within the world that we live. However, that being said, it's something that I often forget to do, although I am making a concerted effort to make sure that I do have reusable bags with me. And I'm sure that people listening are far more prepared than I am. So what I might start doing in the future is just literally putting a post-it note on the front door to remind me to take a reusable bag with me when I'm going shopping. And actually, the time that I usually get caught out is where I've gone out to just purchase one thing. So I have a cloth bag, which I use as a handbag. I have that with me, so more than enough to put one item in, but I end up purchasing more things than I'd intended, and then I can't fit them all into my cloth bag. So that's the time when I tend to get caught out. So as I say, I'm sure people listening are far more prepared than me, but it is perhaps useful to somehow or other set yourself a reminder to take a reusable bag with you. In fact, we have been talking about reusable bags here at Answer. And in fact, we've recently shared some social media posts about Bags for Life. And the reason we have done that is because we have noticed that we are finding reusable bags within recycling. But the reusable bags in question are the type of rigid plastic bags, so where the plastic is kind of weaved together and the handle is made from a different material than the bag base. So it is a plastic type material, but as I say, the handle is different to the bag base, and in fact they cannot be recycled in your silver recycling bin here in Cheshire East. We can recycle plastic bags, so this is where the handle and the bag base are made from the same material. It's a soft but fairly sturdy plastic bag. So you can kind of squash it and it will sort of move very easily. But it is also very often described as a bag for life. So we have effectively two examples, if you like, of a bag for life. So we have the plastic bag example on the one hand, no pun intended, and then we have a more sturdy plastic bag for life on the other hand. So the sturdy plastic bag, where the handle is made from a different material to the bag base, and as I say, if you look at the bag, it looks like it's been weaved together and the plastic is a little bit more rigid. And then we have the plastic bag, where the plastic is much softer and the handle and the base are made from the same material. So that plastic bag can go in your silver recycling bin, but it does need to be clean, it needs to be empty, and it cannot be tied. So the reasons for that is it needs to be clean because all of the recycling that goes in your silver recycling bin does, of course, need to be clean. It needs to be empty because we do need to keep our recycling loose here in Cheshire East so that it's more easily sorted, so that we can see what we have in recycling, so it makes it much easier for that sorting process. And also it ensures that incorrect items have not been placed in recycling. So if a plastic bag is placed in your silver recycling bin and that contains items and that bag is then tied shut, then that cannot be recycled. But moving back to that other type of reusable bag for life, that is still made from a plastic type material, but it appears to have been woven. It's a lot stiffer, it's a lot thicker. Usually they're bigger as well than the soft plastic alternative. Those types of kind of more rigid plastic bags cannot go in your silver recycling bin. They cannot be recycled in that way. But, and this is a big but, and again, no pun intended, all of these bags are designed to be reused. So when we purchase them here in the UK, they are generally described as a bag for life. Now, whilst we might not expect them to last for 20, 30 years or so, because they may well get ripped or damaged in some way and then they become unusable, we would expect them to last for a very, very long time. And that's what they're designed to do. So if you have a bag for life of any kind, do keep using it and do remember to take it with you when you go out shopping. And you may of course need to take more than one, of course. So it's a really great thing to do. So keep using those bags for life, take them with you when you go out shopping and keep on using them. When either of the types of bags for life become unusable, in many shops and supermarkets, you can actually take them back to the original retailer to be replaced. So your bag for life has become ripped, you can no longer use it, so you take the bag for life back to the original retailer that you purchased it from, and then they will replace it with a new one. And the best thing to do there, of course, is to check when you purchased your bag. Simply ask the question, when this bag becomes unusable, when this bag becomes ripped, will you replace it for me for free? So ask that question of the shop or the supermarket in question. And hopefully the answer there will be yes, we will replace it for you. If that's not an option, then when your bag for life becomes unusable, ripped, you simply can't use it anymore. If it's plastic, and it's that soft plastic that we've already mentioned, it can go in your silver bin, must be clean, untied, must not have anything in it. Or if it's the other type of plastic bag, which is more of a weaved material, that type of plastic bag, once it becomes unusable, it's ripped, it's damaged, we can't use it anymore, that type of plastic bag, you can't get it exchanged for a new one at a shop or supermarket, it would unfortunately need to go in your black household waste bin. We have been talking about bags for quite some time, but just sticking with them for a little bit longer, you can also get a bag for life that's made out for, for example, canvas, Jute is another material that's made out of. Cotton, hemp is another material it might be made out of. All of those Bags for Life, again, cannot go into your silver recycling bin because it's not plastic, so it cannot be recycled in that way. But again, they are designed to be reused, so keep using them for as long as you can. And with a cotton bag, or even a hemp bag actually for that matter, hemp is a bit more of a thicker material than cotton. Anything that can actually be easily washed in your washing machine, you can just pop it in. So I think we have talked about Bags for Life of different types for quite some time now, so let's move on to our fourth example, which is, perhaps unsurprisingly, refillable water bottles. It's an obvious one, but it is a good one. Buy a refillable water bottle and keep on using it. I find that it's helpful to get one that is super easy to clean. So some refillable water bottles have quite complicated mechanisms that are difficult to clean, especially if you're looking to put it in a dishwasher. So from my experience, those kind of metal water bottles are really great, and I also think they're quite useful for keeping the liquid within them cold as well. So the other thing to kind of keep in mind here as well, that lots of places now will refill your water bottle for free. So simply ask the question when you go into a cafe or a shop or so on, and find out if they will refill your water bottle for free. Then the other thing that you can do, certainly here in the UK, is to download the Refill app, and that will tell you the places that you can go to have your water bottle filled for free. I have noticed as well that some train stations have a water container where you can refill your bottle for free as well. So that's a really great thing to do. So moving slightly away from water bottles, but staying with drinks, refillable coffee cups, which of course you can also put tea in them, or any drink of your hot drink of your choice, even a cold drink actually for that matter. These are also really, really great to have. I have a couple of them. I do sometimes go to coffee shops, and actually if you take your refillable cup with you, a lot of them will either give you a discount or they will give you extra points because you've used a refillable coffee cup. So it's great to have them with you wherever you go. And of course you can use them at home as well. They're not just for out and about. And I have sort of found, and maybe you're like me, that drinks can sometimes go cold rather quickly because I get distracted or focused on work, and then I find that the lovely hot cup of tea that I've made is no longer hot. So if it's in an insulated cup, then of course it will stay hotter for much longer, so that's beneficial as well. So that's refillable water bottles, and also a sidelong move into refillable coffee cups. So another thing that we can do, so this is example 5, is to carry a reusable straw and utensils with us when we go out and about. So if you're someone who just really feels that they need to have a drink with a straw, then it's certainly worthwhile carrying a reusable one with you. Reusable utensils, of course, are useful as well. Moving on to example 6, shop at bulk stores or refill stores. So you can purchase dry goods such as spices, pasta, rice and so on from bulk stores or refill stores. Now I don't have a bulk store as such near to me, and we don't actually own a car, so that wouldn't really work very well in our household, but it may well work in yours. And then use your own containers to fill up with the product that you're buying. If you've listened to the Challenge to Change podcast before, you will know that I often talk about zero waste shops or refill stores, and I do use one on a regular basis for our household items where it's appropriate to refill in that way. So it is a really great thing to do for the planet, and of course it does help us to be more zero waste. So that is another really useful example. So moving on to example 7, we can compost at home. So if you don't compost at home already, you don't need to have a large outdoor space to do so. And there are different methods For composting, you can also look at wormeries as well. So there are some really useful videos on this on the ANSA website. So if you go to ANSA, so that's ANSA.co.uk, and click on Answer in the Community and then Community Toolkit, you will find lots and lots of composting videos. And as I say, your outside space does not need to be big in order for you to do home composting. Sticking with composting just for a few moments longer, you may even be able to start community composting if that's an option for you where you live. So not just composting at home, but maybe in some kind of community garden or something like that. So if that is an option for you, if that's something that you're keen to get involved with, then it may well be worth looking into. So something else that may be a possibility, moving on to example 8, is to switch to real nappies and washable wipes. This, of course, does reduce waste. So if you live here in Cheshire East, it may well be worth visiting the Cheshire East Council's website and searching for real nappies, because there is a scheme that we offer here in Cheshire East that enables you to save some money on real nappies. So have a look into that and see if that's something that would be useful to you. Moving on to example 9, choose reusable food storage. So instead of using plastic wrap, plastic sandwich bags, use reusable containers instead. So, or for example, you could also use beeswax wraps, glass jars, stainless steel containers. It's worth noting as well that plastic isn't necessarily a no-no here. Of course, as we know, plastic is taken from the earth, so there is an impact upon the earth in that process of actually creating the plastic in the first place, particularly, of course, when we're thinking about virgin plastic. So that, of course, is plastic that is new, as we've talked about before on the Challenge to Change podcast. But if, like we do in our household, you do occasionally succumb to a takeaway, very often the items that you purchase will arrive in plastic tubs. And no doubt this is something that people already do, but these can be washed out and they can be reused over and over again, and they can go in your dishwasher as well. Again, this is just based on personal experience. I personally would recommend giving them a bit of a rinse first, and of course, if you have any food scraps left in them, hopefully you don't, but if you do and they're no longer edible, then of course, obviously, don't rinse those down the sink, but hopefully you've eaten all of the contents, or perhaps saved it to another day and you're eating it on the following day. But basically, when those plastic containers are empty and rinsed clean, you can put them in your dishwasher. So again, it's worth noting that with that type of plastic, it's not virgin plastic per se. So you're reusing it. So there is kind of an environmental win there. Of course, from a general perspective, if you're looking at plastic, then it's always worthwhile looking at recycled plastic. But basically, choosing to reuse containers, rather than using single-use plastic wrap or single-use plastic bags is a really great thing to do to work towards being more zero waste. Moving on to example 10. So take your rubbish home with you. Of course, this is something that we should all do. If we're unable to place it in a bin, then take it home and put it in the bin at home. But another really great thing to do, so if you have something that can be recycled, take that home, rinse it out and then recycle it. And if you live here in Cheshire East, then you will know that you recycle things into your silver recycling bin. But as we know, it does need to be rinsed clean first. So we can't have things in the recycle bin that are food contaminated or even contaminated with a drink of some kind. Moving on to example 11, and of course we have talked about this example many times before on the Challenge to Change podcast, but it bears repeating. second-hand clothing, or to give it another name, pre-loved clothing. So of course you can look at charity shops, second-hand shops, you can look at various different apps. So for example, we can look at eBay, Etsy, Vinted, groups on Facebook, maybe even Gumtree. So there are various different options to look for pre-loved clothing, or actually pre-loved anything within reason. It's a really great thing to do, and it's also a really great thing to sell items that way or donate to charity as well if we have clothing that we don't want. So moving on to example 12, borrow, don't buy. So where this is an option, it's worthwhile looking at borrowing tools, books of course, which we've already mentioned. So we can borrow them from maybe community groups, we can borrow them from friends and family, rather than purchasing something that you will rarely use. Of course, this might not be an option for everyone, but where it is, it's a really useful thing to do. Example 13, ditch disposable razors. Again, if this is an option for you, it may well be worthwhile switching to a safety razor with replaceable blades. Example 14. Use cloth towels and napkins. Again, where this is an option, replace paper towels and napkins with washable cloth alternatives. This is also a really great thing to do for removing makeup or carrying out like a cleansing skincare routine, rather than using cotton pads that are designed to be used once and then thrown away. Use washable cloths instead, but also within the kitchen or in the household in general, to use washable cloths. And in fact, you can go one step further here. So for household cleaning cloths, you can also use textiles that are no longer able to be used as clothes. So let's say, I don't know, you have a cotton t-shirt that has become ripped. You can actually turn that into a cloth, a household cloth, particularly actually if it's made of cotton rather, because it's a really great thing to do cleaning with. So moving on to example 15, invest in quality. So buying things that are durable, things that will last the distance and won't need to be frequently replaced, will reduce waste over time. Now, of course, in the first instance, this can be difficult because by and large, we would expect to spend more money on investing in quality. So that can be challenging, but where it is an option, it is a really great thing to do. Example 16, we can upcycle old items. So we can get creative with old and worn out items by repurposing them into something new. So as we've already mentioned, we can turn old clothes into cleaning rags, which is not upcycling, it's more repurposing. But we can turn household furniture into household furniture that we want to keep. So I'll give you an example here. We have an ottoman in our house, and I've had it for quite a long time. It's very strong, it's very sturdy. Did, I think, as I recall, cost me a reasonable amount of money at the time that I bought it, but it does have some marks on it now. So for quite some time I've been meaning to use fabric paints to give it a new lease of life, and it's not something that I have yet gotten around to, but maybe through this podcast episode it will prompt me to get that done. But it's a really great way of holding on to that more expensive item and just keeping on using it, and also making it look more beautiful than it currently does. So that is a great example of upcycling, but we can repurpose as well. Moving on to example 17, we can try growing our own food. So that could just be a simple, small herb garden, could even be on a window ledge, or it could be growing vegetables and fruit and so on. And I believe that potatoes is a really useful example here because they are quite easy to grow. So that might be something that you want to have a go at doing. And as already mentioned, herb gardens are also, I believe, quite straightforward and a really great way of reducing waste and actually as well saving ourselves some money. Example 18, and we've already touched on this, and in fact actually we've talked about it lots of times before on the Challenge to Change podcast. We can support zero waste stores. So if you have one close to you or fairly close to you, it's really worthwhile giving them a try. It's a great way of reducing waste. So if you're keen and you've thought about it, but you're a little bit nervous and you're not sure if you want to go in, remember that the reason that you want to support this type of shopping experience is because you want to protect planet Earth. And of course, the people working in that shop feel exactly the same way that you do. So it will be a positive experience, and significantly, you will be helping the planet by doing this. Moving on to example 19. You can perhaps consider using reusable sanitary items such as cloth pads or moon cups. It's worthwhile looking into if it's something that you've considered but you haven't quite gotten around to. You do save money over time, and of course you do significantly reduce waste. The final example is to educate and advocate. So share your zero waste practices with others, and that doesn't have to be in kind of a preachy way where you're kind of almost forcing people to do something different. It might just simply be talking about it in a more conversational way. Oh, I went to my local refill store today, or I've just purchased myself a reusable water bottle. It literally could just be conversational in that way. But through doing that, you are kind of gently letting people know what you're doing, and it may well influence them to do something similar. So, lots of different options there. Even if you do just one or two of these, you will help to reduce your waste and live a more zero waste existence. And in Zero Waste Week, it's the perfect time to make a start if you haven't already. But if you're already a zero waste expert, please do share your experiences and share some tips with me here on the Challenge to Change podcast. You just need to comment underneath the podcast episode. I'd be really interested in hearing those. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. I hope you've managed to bear with me till the end, because it is a little bit longer than the normal podcast episodes that we share. I will, of course, return with another episode really soon, and thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.